been a large number of clinical trials now of a variety of types of gene therapy for Parkinson's disease, and there's a tremendous amount of work going on preclinically that could advance to the clinic in recent years. Right now, there's no approved gene therapy for Parkinson's disease. However, there have been some approved gene therapies in recent years for other neurological disorders, which raises a much greater potential for a late-stage Parkinson's gene therapy to become approved if the data supports it, because the barrier towards using gene therapies clinically, not just experimentally, but in routine practice, has been lowered by the approval of some gene therapies for spinal muscular atrophy and certain ophthalmologic diseases, et cetera. And so that certainly makes it a lot easier to envision a pathway towards FDA approval for a promising gene therapy. So there's been a lot of advances in the field, both generally, as I just mentioned, from a regulatory and approval standpoint, and scientifically, there are several gene therapies that are in clinical trials that for a variety of approaches. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenges with bringing in gene therapy have been severalfold. First of all, there's just the general public and regulatory view of gene therapy being kind of a separate thing from a lot of other things that are taken through the FDA process. So it takes very long. Because a gene therapy is a sort of genetic modification of cells, in theory, permanently, there has been a view that you just have to follow patients longer to see if there are problems. If you give somebody a drug that only lasts a few hours in the bloodstream, then it doesn't take very long to do studies to see whether or not it's safe. You can treat a bunch of patients, follow them for 6 or 8 weeks, and that's all you need to show that it's safe. But with a gene therapy, there's been this view that you have to do much longer follow-ups and much more complicated studies to be able to tell if it's safe as well as effective. So that's been one challenge that I think has slowed things down, because gene therapy has been tested in human patients for Parkinson's disease since we treated the first patient back in 2003. So we and others have been testing gene therapies in human patients for over 20 years, and yet still nothing is actually approved yet. And part of that has been because of a variety of difficulties with funding, because these are very expensive things to do and fund. Part of it has been because of certain gene therapies that did not meet expectations, and part of it has been just general challenges with delivering. Now, another issue with gene therapy is choosing the proper patient that might be best for a particular gene therapeutic, and then how do you deliver that gene therapy to the brain? And most of the patients to date have been done surgically, and that's obviously what I do. But having developed the technology that's being used in most of these cases, which is so-called adeno-associated virus, I was one of the people who developed that, and was actually the first author of the first paper that used AAV in the brain back in '94. And then having done the first human Parkinson's gene therapy trials back in 2003, I've had a very, very long view of the development of this field. And I think that I'm encouraged by the number of studies that have shown how safe this really is. There have been very few, to my knowledge, serious adverse events in any of the gene therapy studies that have been done, regardless of what approach has been taken. And there has been some promise in showing effectiveness, either clinically in terms of patient improvements or in terms of imaging improvements, or in some cases both. So I think that there has been a lot of advance in the translation of this into more advanced human trials or later stage trials. But then, of course, there's a whole universe, as you mentioned earlier, of preclinical excitement. And I think that where we're at will hopefully allow newer things to also enter patient trials and be more and accelerate more quickly because of the experiences that we've all had.